Everyone, welcome to 2020 and what begins to be a monthly series, half an hour dedicated to security, usually based on news events from the prior month. In this particular case, we had 2 months to work with because we didn't have one of these in December of last year. But welcome to 2020. Our goal is to kind of help you see clearly. Pun was intended on that in terms of what's going on with regards to security here as we start the year. Got an agenda, a little bit of a new format from a PowerPoint perspective, but really kind of similar in terms of our desires to do some storytelling with regards to what's occurred this month. We also want to spend a little bit of time on solution overviews. What can you do about it? It's great to talk about problems and kind of see what's going on in the industry, but really want to set some declarative benchmarks, if you will, regarding what you should be doing to solve some of these problems, to lower your risk, right? And so we're going to spend at least a few minutes on that on two specific slides. And then obviously, if there's time, as time allows, we love Q&A either in the panel from a chat perspective or take yourself off mute. So to begin, just some of the stories we were seeing that I thought were worthwhile. They're referenced down the bottom right in terms of sources. This one was a little bit scary. Virtual care provider is an organization that has over 100 nursing homes that they monitor and manage, representing a significant amount of computers. And they were asked to provide, they got the hackers allegedly, and apparently from what news could be produced, they stole the relevant health data on patients and so forth that were under the care of this provider, and then they encrypted the data. And so really the first indication of compromise was that, hey, I can't get to my servers. And lo and behold, unfolding was a ransomware. In this particular case, they were using the Ryuk, R-Y-U-K ransomware, which you may recall from last year, has been very prevalent. It's a very nasty, no keys available type ransomware. Even when you get the recovery keys, if you were to pay for it, about 1/8 of your files or 12% of your files are not even recoverable. And in any case, so some nasty ransomware affected all of their computers and servers. So this, obviously impacted their services. They had no internet. Their phones were down. Their EMR system, billing, payroll, all of them were impacted. And in this particular case, the ransomware advocates thought, okay, 80,000 computers, they must be a really large organization. As it turned out, they were really more of like a front end for them. So the $14 million ransom they were being asked to pay, they were not even close to that from a revenues perspective and the ability to pay that. So I don't know what has happened to them since then. I'll kind of do some follow-up maybe next month. But I think the thing to point out here is that this has some real ramifications, right? There could be, it could lead to obviously closure of their business, but also to maybe untimely demise of some of their patients. Vanderbilt had done a study that there was a 10% increase in mortality rates for the year after the breach of a Health and Human Services facility. So hospitals and in this case, care providers, it really does have some, financial security as well as in potential life well-being ramifications. There also was something called Snatch Ransomware I want you to be aware of, simply because Windows Safe Mode has always been designated as something usually where your machine is trying to uncover problems that it may have had in the boot sequence. And Windows Safe Mode also helps you troubleshoot some of those workstation maladies by it's a vanilla way. There's less software, less drivers, and less services. And some of those services are often antivirus and anti-malware services that can't start. So if you see a significant number of workstations that are booting into safe mode, be wary and know that there could be a plant of something called Snatch Ransomware. It both combines the boot of safe mode with some data theft and weaponizing ransomware. And this ransomware specifically does, some of the trends we're seeing in the industry is This ransomware, when deployed, deletes the virtual storage copies or VSS copies of workstations and servers first. And one negotiator said that he had seen this a couple dozen times in Q4 with Bitcoin requests from 2,000 to 35,000. Another issue off the ransomware topic and kind of into the email arena, Microsoft put out this guidance, which said between September of 2018 and September of 2019, the amount of spearfishing that we're receiving in our inboxes doubled. Now, Microsoft would be a pretty valid place to be talking about this, since they looked at just a small trivial amount of 470 billion emails to get this data. Obviously, they're a good traffic cop for a lot of email flow. So 0.6% of the emails coming into your inbox are CEO impersonation or something of that nature. The quality of these spearfishing emails is also ramping. So in addition to quantity, the quality is going up. Some of them are being called laser phishing as opposed to spearfishing, even just because they're so well crafted that people can't recognize them with typical training. They provide some good examples in the article that's referenced there of recruiters, use of social media for travel schedules and dollar transfer schedules. So just know spearfishing is on the rise. And then I definitely want to talk about this. We're aware of an organization that suffered something called the golden ticket attack. Golden ticket is named aptly because this is kind of similar to the Willy Wonka exercise, where effectively they get access to not only the keys, but also to your access control system itself. And so the golden ticket essentially allows them to create any credentials they'd like and or provide any credentials to any login there for access to any resource, meaning they own everything. And the golden ticket is kind of a symptom of something called the kill chain, which I tried to highlight on the right with the best graphic I could find. But ultimately, it's a time thing. So if they've been in a while, you know, the early stages, oftentimes when you're finding things, are often reconnaissance, where they're just trying to see what's going on. What kind of business is this? You know, what kind of data do you have? Later on, you know, oftentimes where we kind of leave off or maybe see things being exploited, something like ransomware, right, where things have been weaponized and you're actually having problems. But behind the scenes, there actually could be, you know, if there's more money to be had, there's more that can be done. So they might be planting, you know, command and control so that, you know, after you've uncovered the ransomware and solved that problem, there's still additional problems going on. But kind of the ultimate here is the golden ticket, where nothing is owned by yourself, if you will. An outsider has full access to everything. And with that, I guess wanted to just kind of give you some insight that, you know, your incident response plan is going to be critical in this case. Your first calls are going to be to your insurance provider, and they're going to be providing you a lot of guidance. They're going to be involving a forensics team that if they don't have contacts, or if you don't have contacts for the forensics team, they'll likely put you in touch with one. There'll be legal representatives. There may, depending on data breaches, be customer notifications. And all at the same time, while this exercise is going on, you're just trying to restore and keep the business alive and make the customer impact as little as possible. And then usually out of those forensics exercises, you're finding that there was 15, 20 security gaps you had to fill in, and now you're having to spend money to go back to do what you should have done maybe before the breach. So I guess I'm just kind of pointing out the fact that we see this, we see people at various aspects of this, and to the degree possible, front-ending money towards the spend on security is oftentimes wise, as it, you know, helps prevent some of the things that can happen down the line. So people often ask us, you know, what would you do? Like, what are some basics to do this? And so we put this in a format that I thought I'd spend at least a couple minutes, and this is part of our solution overview. What are we advising that you do? Well, we lay down what we call some foundational things, and hopefully some of these things are like, no-brainers for you. Of course, got that checkbox, right? But things like a next-gen firewall, right? If you have a firewall that's, some characteristics for you to think about is your firewall kind of 3 years or newer? Is your firewall application aware, not port-based? So you're not blocking, a certain port like 1482 or for TCP. You're instead blocking particular applications, and then the application aware firewall is determining what ports are based on that. If you have a reporting console, all of these things are part of what you might see as part of a foundation, and we would expect every customer to have that. And if you don't, we feel like you're at a gap. We feel like you're at risk. We also expect you to have next generation antivirus and malware. This might mean that it's likely 3 years old or newer from a product perspective. Symantec has a number of, as an example, signature-based antiviruses, as does McAfee. Oftentimes, they also have recently, newer products that are not based on signatures. They're centrally managed and reported. They might have the ability to roll back to known good states or have forensics logging and things of that nature. We also expect you to have good backup, right? The backup, we would need you to prove almost that you can recover major systems and data, maybe from yesterday, right? Maybe do so quickly. Again, how often and how quickly you can get this data is sort of up to you and your recovery point and time objectives. But the other important thing here is that you have an offline backup. We're seeing too often these ransomwares, the first thing they're doing is going off and deleting backups, or a nefarious actor is deleting backups. They don't want you to be able to recover. They want you to pay the ransom, and your ability to recover is one of your remediations for that. Patch policy, how boring, right? There's nothing less exciting than patch policy, but tell me that you can restore or that you have patches applied to all your workstations and servers in less than 30 days. And if not 30 days, why not? If it's 60 days, there might be certain reasons for it, or 90 days, but faster the better. And just know that patch policy is really important aspect of this too. And then last but not least, in the foundational area, we're expecting, good administrative controls, separate admin accounts from your users. We're expecting that if you have Office 365, which many of you do today, that your admins have MFA turned on. Maybe you control what IPs the admins can do their work from, so that they have to either be on the network or on a VPN. Maybe you'd exclude them from doing things from certain machines that are not domain joined or things of that nature. There certainly is capabilities. None of that is set up by default. Roles-based access, things of that nature. I'm going to take a couple more minutes just to highlight a few more solutions that I'd consider more basic. Still something that you likely should have in place, but something that people work with different solutions in that space. Nowadays, with all the spearfishing that's going on, with the amount of email threats that are out there, it's no longer logical just to have spam hygiene to clean up spam or bulk mail, right? We need email advanced protection. We need something that is going to block at the front door emails coming in that have unknown, 0-day attachments on them, that have malicious links, that might be prone to phishing or spearfishing type attacks. A dollar spent in that department is a good dollar for advanced protection. I would say our customers are underserved in this space today, but certainly something you should get educated about. There's a number of solutions that are available for that, including Microsoft ATP, including Mimecast, including Zix, things of that nature. We believe strongly that Office 365 is a new platform for a lot. There's a lot of things that go on. There's dozens of security related settings in Office 365. Some of them are really poor defaults from Microsoft in terms of how they set things up, but you should be looking for things like funky logins or foreign logins to your Office 365. We see that on a daily basis with customers where we're monitoring where they might have foreign logins going to their Office 365. Legacy ports that are out there. Department of Homeland Security actually put out a warning in September of this past year with regards to some of those bad defaults. Port scans, you should be doing vulnerability scans. If you were doing this annually, I'd say that's probably foundational. At this point, doing them quarterly, monthly, weekly. What if I told you, boy, it would be great to see what changes are occurring port-wise in your environment on a daily basis. That would be kind of where things are growing to, or not, or going to, with regards to some of our customers. RDP port in specific is an area where it's an indication of compromise. If you have an open RDP port to your environment, you likely are going to be a target of a soon-to-be ransomware. Security awareness, it should go without saying. Obviously, people have been doing this for years. Oh, we got security awareness. And if you're doing it annually and in person, I would call that foundational. Okay, if you're doing this, have you thought about how to do this online? Have you thought about how to do this monthly? Have you thought about doing it, even more frequently than that? Have you thought about doing some testing along with that? And how about up-to-date scams? There's stuff that's coming out this month, and I know, I appreciate your attendance here to kind of listen to some of those things, but that's the sort of thing that we're talking about. That could be, a better version of security awareness today. And last but not least is internet security. There's a lot of things a lot of people are doing, right? There's a lot of applications that are having conversations with the internet. There's a lot of people that are browsing to various parts of the internet. And even when you're on what might be a legitimate website, that website may have been infected with some Magecart or other things that we've spoke about, in previous discussions. It would be wise to have something that's always evaluating internet traffic. And certainly your firewall, next-gen firewall, is capable of doing that. But not all users are always behind your firewall. Today's mobile user is out, leveraging the internet from homes, from cafes, and so forth. So having a good rule set for internet traffic and something known as internet security through DNS, we think is logical. There's a number of products for that. Cisco Umbrella is one that we leverage, and there are certainly others. In the run stage, I think it's future discussions about other things that could be done. We'd be looking for nefarious traffic at the Active Directory level or at the firewall level or through your wireless or via backup. So certainly we can graduate to those areas, but let's focus on the basics. If anything's unchecked for you today, look into it, right? I think those are areas to kind of help us as we talk about now some additional vulnerabilities we're seeing from this past month. All right, so this one's kind of just a quick story. Chubb put out a report. Should be no surprise. They're in the insurance space, but I thought they had a good quote in there. A $15 million event, which they were seeing as kind of typical with regards to insurance claims. It can be catastrophic, right, for a mid-market business, but kind of a line item for larger enterprises. So give some thought to what risk tolerance you have within your organization. And I highlight the following stat from their report only, and that is, as IT tries to align with business, right, I think you'll find it interesting that from a business perspective, the number one risk that business thinks of, it's not state of the economy, and it's not how are we going to grow or legal risk or anything of that nature. It's cybersecurity, right? And so there often is a budget for if there's, we always see significant spend for security after an event has happened. Part of your goal in charter, I think, as an IT representative is to say, there is risk to the business. Let me quantify that risk, prove that risk, and here are some wise solutions for it. So your goal is kind of move you closer to the business through risk avoidance. Certainly wouldn't be a month if we didn't say, okay, in January, Windows 7 as well as Windows Server 2008 have gone end of support or end of, so with end of support, you'll find that Windows 7, ironically, still has 18.9% market share in December of 2019. So you can see the numbers have gone down pretty dramatically, but the last 20% shift we saw was, from mid 2018 to end of 2019. So it took 18 months to go down 20%. It's probably going to take us another 18 months at least to get rid of Windows 7. What happens to those machines now that they're not getting patches starting this month? I ask that only as we kind of dive into this a little bit more. I will say that one quick solution for if you still happen to have some Windows 7 in your environment, we are able to, as an organization, sell you something called extended service updates. It is $60 per year per machine, and effectively it allows patches that they're still going to create to continue to roll through to Windows 7 machines. There's a little bit of technical setup for that to occur, but long story short is $60 per machine per year helps mitigate that risk. What risk are we talking about? Well, Internet Explorer is the default browser for Windows 7, and no coincidence, this month we had a critical vulnerability come up, and expect more in the ones coming up. There's actually no patch available right now, so even if you have extended service updates, the goal right now is don't use Internet Explorer. Well, guess what? Internet Explorer is still used in 7.42% of internet traffic right now on desktops and laptops. So don't use Internet Explorer right now this month. Why? Because if a user, let's just take user A, is using Internet Explorer to browse a website, that website, if malicious, has malicious code in it, can take over ownership of the workstation just by use of the browser. It's basically called drive-by vulnerability, and it essentially is using some, it's called JavaScript on the background. It's a library that they're essentially able to take advantage of. I noted the CVE there. Where possible, use group policies, use guidance, use firewalls to block the use of Internet Explorer. Ironically, right now, word is still out. It's related to Mozilla Firefox browser also, and there may be some vulnerabilities there. But ironic that this comes out the month after or the week after end of service is announced. Citrix had an issue. Not to pick on Microsoft anymore, we'll zip over to Citrix. This was actually a communication we sent out to our Pulse customers that we had identified with Citrix in their environment. But if you are a Citrix user and you happen to have a gateway, a Citrix gateway or a NetScaler, either you've been contacted by us and already patched, or if you're not our customer today and want to get in touch with us regarding the Citrix vulnerability, great. It is a critical vulnerability. It allows for remote execution, and the fix was just published literally earlier this week, and we've already patched a half dozen servers in the first 24 hours of this being available. And I think I gave you enough information there to kind of follow up on it if you need to. Windows Server PKI, so this is a big one. Also, earlier we had kind of talked about a customer with the golden ticket, and that was the access control system. But the other part of the access control system is something called a certificate issue authority, which is usually done through PKI. This has to do with signatures. So like if ever you've installed software and it says, this has been signed by Microsoft, it kind of gives you a flavor of trust, means your machine can trust it, and you install it, and your machine might even have some group policies to say, I only install trusted software. Well, what if I took a piece of junk code and I signed it? Through this PKI vulnerability, I can sign that junk code as Microsoft, as Adobe. So applications could be signed, websites, software companies, service providers. This is a critical patch. This patch is relevant to a lot of Windows servers, and effectively the CVE that's mentioned there, 2020-0601, is to be installed immediately within your environment. The last one, I think this is the last sort of story I have here, is just around pandemic flu. Obviously, it's getting a lot of attention recently, and my job here is not to stoke fears with regards to, flu planning. But the thought is, we don't even need to cite a source on this particular story because you can just pretty much search, and it's hot news, if you will. So everybody's got a talking point about this. But the goal here is that organizations oftentimes are not prepared from a people perspective for what can occur with regards to pandemic flu planning, which really is part of disaster recovery and part of the whole set of things that you need to be evaluating with regards to your organization. So some stats are on the screen with regards to why to plan. But in terms of what to plan for, I put up this little chart just to kind of give you some guidance with regards to how to think about this potentially. So a lot of times people have a DR plan on paper, right? And we'll call that their contingency plan, or they kind of think of it that way. And hopefully you've done some due diligence to work with the departments to talk about, hey, what's the critical aspects of our business and what could be down for a week and what could be down for a day. And that's kind of how your backups are. And that's called your business impact analysis. But I thought it might be helpful for you to see some of the pillars that you can kind of think about. Incident response is something we talk about often with regards to security. Who are you going to call and so forth. But also, there's life safety instructions. So if you have evacuation procedures today, you actually already have some life safety stuff in there. But crisis management and business continuity are other plans that can be assembled and are all part of your security plan as a whole. Now, there's some stories we didn't tell here that I will just mention. Microsoft had a support database that they leaked this month. So if you have Premier Support Contract and you had a contact with them in the past year, that conversation, ticket number, and so forth was all in a database. So Microsoft had a database breach due to a misconfiguration. There were many stories about that. I just want to let you know that I didn't miss these. I just felt like I wasn't sure where they were directly relevant. There also was another story about it was a password of 500,000 or 500,000 devices that are out there on the internet that have open ports and default or easy passwords. And so that database is widely available. I'm hoping and I'm suggesting that as part of your foundational security, you don't use default passwords on internet-facing devices. But if you do, right, and need some help in that space, there's a large database that might have your devices in it that has been widely available to anyone who would like to take advantage. We also saw a lot of loyalty programs, American Airlines and Starbucks and other people that are having their points stolen from them because as ransomware might be less effective or spearfishing is getting less effective, people are looking for other ways to make money. So just know that the web is spreading a little bit. And just in quick fashion, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware. If you're not checkboxed on the crawl or walk areas, we sell and have services around firewall. We sell and have services for complete management of antivirus and malware and patching, right? We can do that stuff for you. It's relatively commodity. We do so for 2,000 plus devices on a monthly basis. Make sure that their patches are up to date and on a minute-by-minute basis are aware of their antivirus protection. Some of the products we use are illustrated on the screen there with WebRoot. From a backup perspective, we do managed backup for dozens of customers. We've got, we leverage products such as Veeam or in some cases, Microsoft Azure backup. Okay. From an admin policy, we've got a MFA in a day service where we're essentially going in and helping you uncover what are your roles today? What does that look like? What tools do you have, whether it's Office 365 or Enterprise Mobility Suite or M365 to kind of evaluate what your policies are. We also can help you with things like password policy and so forth. So we've given some thought to these areas and we have areas and ways to fill things in. We have paid for trials for our email and advanced protection, as well as internet security. And we have free trials actually for the middle three. So if you want to checkbox those, any of these three are available as free trials. Security review for 365, see where you might have weakness. Phishing test, we'll do a one-time email test to see where your employees are. We had a customer last week that was about 24% of their environment clicked, and about 6 or 8% of that environment provided login and password information into the malicious site. So again, we're experienced at running those things and can help you at least baseline where you're at. And then obviously vulnerabilities, specifically we're looking for RDP as a port, again, as an indicator of compromise. So in terms of blogs, we're posting 2 blogs a week, kind of at a minimum. We've got recaps of this month in cyber, which we did back in November. We've got security risks of using Windows 7 after support. Just highlighted a few blogs that might be of some interest, but certainly poke around out there. There's a search to kind of filter things down in terms of upcoming events. We've got a Teams event coming up in February where we're going to be talking about kind of the why Teams, how to secure Teams, what the governance dials and wizards are, and then help you kind of get started on that. And then we also have another this month in cybersecurity. Certainly open to any questions with that time remaining, and as you know, a future discussion, we'd look forward to having any conversations. You can email us, call us, or chat with us over coffee.